From the dawn of human civilization, there's a concept that weaves its way through cultures, particularly ancient cultures, spanning continents, stretching across centuries. A concept that really is as old as mankind itself, and it's the idea of transformation. But not the simple metamorphosis you might think of, or we might think of, like the butterfly breaking free from its cocoon. Not this. This is something more primal, more deeply woven into the fabric of our ancestors' spiritual understanding. The ability to transform from human into animal. Throughout history, shamans and mystics, along with spiritual leaders of some kind, have worn the guise of animals to embody the powers of the creatures that they revered. Their bodies adorned with animal skins, furs, claws, and even skulls. These leaders crossed the threshold between the human and the animal realm. They did not just believe in the power of transformation. They experienced it on some level, physically, mentally, and most importantly here, spiritually. One of the most striking examples comes from a time and place that many of us still don't fully understand, the ancient cultures of the Americas. These transformations weren't just mere stories told around campfires. They were indeed realities, embodied in the sacred rituals and practices of people who walked the earth, particularly in the Americas, long before our modern understanding of history and anthropology took root. So today, in this video, I'm going to embark on a very interesting journey to explore one of the most fascinating aspects of Native American spirituality, particularly when it deals with the prehistoric era. And these were some sort of modern, or not modern really, but ancient. There is ancient, modern perception of a werewolf and the powerful link between humans and the animal world. So what can the ancient practices and artifacts tell us about the spiritual and physical transformation that took place within these early cultures? Let's first begin by diving into one such example, the incredible phenomenon of shamans wearing animal skins, skulls, and fur to try and transform their creatures of power. It's important to understand that these transformations weren't merely symbolic. Shamans did not just pretend to become animals, they believed they were becoming them, at least we think. The act of wearing animal parts like skins, claws, and skulls wasn't just a performance. It was a powerful spiritual tool and ritual of everyday life. It was believed that by wearing the skin or an element of a creature, the wearer would then tap into the animal's inherent power. Whether it was the strength of a bear, the speed of a deer, or the ferocity of the wolf, these animals were seen as living embodiments of nature's might. One striking example of this practice is seen in a painting by George Catlin titled The Medicine Man, performing his mysteries over a dying man. And in this piece, it was created in 1832, you can see a Blackfoot medicine man that is depicted performing a ritual wearing a bear skin. The intention of this? To channel the power of the bear in an effort to influence the life or death of a dying man. This is more than symbolism. It was the act of becoming the bear, of inviting its power into the ceremony and perhaps even into the dying man's fate. And to me, it's also indicative of a religion that is now relatively lost to history. Sometimes the incorporation of animal body parts was even more direct, taking the form of skulls, jaws, and entire limbs. And we actually have real-life examples of this from archaeological evidence, of which we're going to dive into right now. In the eastern woodlands of what is now, of course, Ohio, there exists an artifact that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about these transformations, these shamanic transformations. This Enter the Ray figurine was a stunning sculpture from the Hopewell culture, dated back to around 200 BC to roughly 500 AD. And this piece is not just a work of art, it's a window into the soul of a people who lived thousands of years ago. A key that unlocks the mystery of the ancient human-animal bond. The Ray figurine depicts a shaman wearing the skin of a bear. But here's where it gets fascinating. As you rotate the sculpture, the interpretation changes. From one angle, the human face appears, propped up by the bear's head. But as you turn it, the human face vanishes, and the bear's own face is revealed in its place, as though the shaman's human identity has completely merged with that of the bear. This rotating transformation is not just artistic. It's a metaphor for what is believed to happen during spiritual rituals. To the people who crafted this figurine, the boundaries between human and animal were fluid. They were a part of the one universal. This symbolic shifting of identities wasn't merely about aesthetic representation. It was a tangible reality to them, and it was sacrament of a very ancient shamanic religion. And the most interesting thing is this figurine really only scratches the surface of archaeological evidence. To truly understand the depths of these transformations, we must venture into the realm very well known on this channel, the Adena people. A culture that, of course, flourished in what we now call southern Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky, dating back to the early woodland period around 1000 BC to 200 BC, and it's widely believed they're the precursor of the other mound-building societies, such as the Hopewell culture. So when we're talking about the Adena, we're pretty much talking about the OGs of the mound-building cultures in a sense. Granted, there are some older ones like the Glacial Cave complex, of which we will delve into a bit in this video. But here's where the idea of animal transformation takes a bit of a darker, more physical form. We have evidence of a practice that goes beyond simple costumes. This is the world of the Adena werewolf shaman. So, in the early 1950s, the Ayers Mound in Kentucky was excavated, and the remains of a burial unlike any other were discovered. A man, estimated to be a young age of 25 to 30 years old, had been buried with a curious, very gruesome addition. A literal wolf's jaw had been surgically inserted into his mouth. The ensue had been removed to make way for the wolf's teeth, and the jaw was carefully positioned so that it would align with the man's own skull. This was no mere ritual. This was an anatomical modification and a medical procedure, a transformation, a true transformation. This practice was not just limited to this just one burial either. Similar findings had been reported from other Adena sites where the jaws of wolves with their fierce canine teeth were affixed to human remains. It's as if though these ancient people believed they could physically become wolves, merging their human essence with that of a predator, a creature of strength and cunning and wisdom. But the transformations didn't stop with just the jawbones. These individuals were often buried in regalia, of course, as well, made from the animal skins, further reinforcing the idea that they were indeed shamans, or perhaps even warriors of some kind who had crossed into the realm of the animal. In many ways, these were not just people who wore animal forms, they became them, body and spirit. Now, we can take this werewolf shaman idea back a little bit even further, though the Adena were the ones that kind of sent it into hyperdrive. But long before the Adena, a culture known as the Glacial Cave culture, or Glacial Cave complex, existed in what is now also the eastern woodlands during the late Archaic period, between 5000 and 1000 BC. Now here we find even earlier examples of werewolf-like transformations. At the Clifford Williams site in Ohio again, 2 modified wolf skulls were discovered alongside human burials. These skulls had been altered in such a way that they could be worn as masks. The orbital sockets and facial features were painstakingly cut away, enabling the wearer to be able to see through the eyes of the wolf. This was a true mask in a sense. These were not simple animal skulls. They were ceremonial masks, tools for transformation and tools for a religious ceremony of some kind. The masks were not just worn as a representation of the wolf, they were meant to bring the wearer into the animal's world to channel its strength, its hunting prowess, its predatory instincts, and its cunning wisdom. These were more than just mere ritualistic items. They were powerful artifacts that are symbols of these ancient people who believed they could transcend the limits of human form and become the very creatures they revered. Now, the concept of transformation is not just limited to these archaeological discoveries either. It's scattered throughout Native American folklore and mythology. Stories of humans turning into animals, particularly wolves, are very common. These stories speak to something much deeper, and especially with the archaeological evidence, it's much, much deeper in my opinion, and many others, of course. An understanding of the human-animal connection that transcends the physical world is something that we will be mystifying and looking into for a long, long time. Shamans wore animal skins and they did these ceremonial practices for a reason. They weren't just trying to look like animals. They were trying to embody the animal spirit and embody the whole, the one of the universe. Whether for hunting, protection, or spiritual journeys, the act of donning animal forms allowed humans to connect with a different primal aspect of the world, a world where boundaries between species did not exist. These practices, rooted in both spiritual belief and practical necessity, represent a conceptual blending of human and animal forms, a merging of worlds that allowed these early peoples to transcend the limitations of their physical bodies. What we find in the ancient burial sites, what we find in the figurines, the artifacts, is not just a glimpse into the primitive past, or what we presume to be a primitive past. It's a testament to the deep, unbroken connection between humanity and the animal world and these lost religions that are based in shamanism. A connection that even today we're only beginning to understand. The universal one. Though the stories of the shamans and the physical evidence they left behind, we see a world where human beings could become more than just themselves, tapping into the raw, untamed power of the universe around them. A world where transformation was not just a metaphor, but indeed a reality. As we look back on these ancient practices, we must ask ourselves, how much of this could be buried within us in some way, just waiting to be discovered? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and check out my other content because it's all dealing with things that are very similar to this. You'll probably like my other content if you like this video. So, comment what you thought about this, and without further ado, I'm out of here. I love you guys. Much love.